Ever feel like getting rich is this big elusive thing that only like Wall Street guys in movies ever get?
Right.
But what if it doesn't have to be some big mystery?
Oh,
That's what we're diving into today with Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. We'll uncover how you define a rich life, whether that's designer jeans, dream vacations, or just, having your finances figured out.
and what's so great about Ramit Sethi is he cuts through all the financial jargon and gets straight to the point.
Totally. And one of his biggest things is building good credit,
Absolutely.
which, okay, I know might not sound like the most exciting thing in the world at first,
Right.
but stick with us because we're talking about potentially saving thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even more in interest.
Yeah, it can make a huge difference, especially when you think about big life goals. Like, imagine buying your dream house one day.
Exactly.
A good credit score can save you a ton of money on your mortgage.
Yeah, it all comes down to risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lenders use your credit score to figure out how risky it is to loan you money. A higher score means you're more likely to pay them back.
Makes sense.
And that means lower interest rates on everything. I mean, everything from mortgages, car loans, even credit cards.
Music to my ears. So, how do we actually boost these scores? What does Ramit say?
Well, he's got some really practical advice. Like, first of all, just checking your credit report regularly.
And you can do that for free, by the way.
Exactly. At annualcreditreport.com.
Yes.
Totally free. But honestly, one of my favorite takeaways from his book is the emphasis on automation.
Yes.
Because, remember our friend who saved thousands?
Oh, yeah.
Automatic credit card payments. That was their game changer.
Seriously. Like,
Yeah.
it's building good credit while you sleep. It doesn't get much easier than that.
It's those little things that you set up once, and then they just work for you in the background.
It's amazing. And speaking of effortless wins, Ramit is all about negotiating with credit card companies.
Oh, for sure.
Remember that listener who wrote in about getting $159 back?
No way, really.
Yeah. All they did was call up their credit card company, pointed out their perfect payment history, and boom, money back in their pocket.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It never hurts to ask. You'd be surprised what you can get just by picking up the phone and having conversation.
For real. Okay, but can we talk about banks for a second? Because sometimes those fees feel like a trap. Like, seriously, ATM charges.
Oh, worse.
I mean, they're just trying to get us.
Right. It's like they make money off of us just for having our own money.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ramit's solution, he's a big fan of those high-interest online savings accounts.
Oh, absolutely. Like ING Direct, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
Way better interest rates than those traditional banks. Plus, they let you set up these virtual sub-accounts.
Oh, that's smart.
So it's like tricking your brain into saving more because you can see your money growing in these different categories.
Love that. It reminds me of this one time I got hit with this ridiculous overdraft fee. And I was so annoyed, right? But I decided, you know what? I'm going to call the bank.
Good for you.
And I just explained the situation politely, and they waived the entire fee.
See? It's all about being proactive.
Exactly. So we're talking about taking control of our money, being intentional. And that leads us to one of Ramit's most popular concepts, which is,
Conscious spending.
okay, so before you start picturing ramen noodles every night, hold on.
Oh, no. This isn't about deprivation at all.
Okay.
It's about being thoughtful, deliberate about where your money's going, spend generously on the things you love, the things that truly matter to you, but also be ruthless about cutting back on the things you don't.
I love that.
Like, do you really need that daily latte?
Right.
Or could that money be better spent on something that brings you more joy?
Yes.
It's all about aligning your spending with your values.
I love that. And Ramit breaks it down into this super manageable system, his 4 major buckets approach.
Yeah. Like spring cleaning, but for your finances. So you've got fixed costs like your rent or mortgage, utilities, things like that. Then there's your investments, savings, and of course, guilt-free spending money.
Yes. Love that. So we're being mindful of our spending, but how do we actually make our money work harder for us?
Yes.
Like, put it on autopilot.
Automation. It's like magic.
Right.
Remit is all about it, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have for building wealth passively.
Okay, well, I'm listening.
So think about it. Automatic transfers for your savings, right? The bill payments scheduled in advance.
Yeah.
It just takes all of that mental load off your plate and it eliminates the risk of forgetting, which, let's be real, we all do sometimes.
Of the time.
Right. So you're not only ensuring that you're being consistent with your savings and your investments, but you're also taking the emotion out of those financial decisions,
Okay.
which is huge.
It's huge.
Because honestly, how often do we make impulsive money choices based on like fear or just getting caught up in the moment?
All the time.
Exactly. But with automation, you're taking that out of the equation.
It's like you're on autopilot, even when life gets crazy.
Exactly.
I love it. And honestly, setting up automatic contributions has made a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
It's like this weight has been lifted because I know that even when I'm busy, my money's still working for me.
It's the best feeling, right?
It really is.
It's like you're silently building this amazing financial future for yourself.
Yes. Okay, so we're automating, which is amazing. But speaking of investing, I feel like that can be really intimidating. There's so much jargon.
It can feel overwhelming for sure, especially with all the financial news and everyone's always telling you what to do. It's like, who do you even listen to?
It's true. And that's why I love that Ramit talks about this myth of the expert, right?
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorite parts of the book.
He uses this example of professional wine tasters
The wine
who
example.
were totally fooled by white wine that was disguised as red wine.
With food coloring.
Yes. And it just shows that even the so-called experts can get it wrong.
Totally.
Sometimes the simplest approach is the best approach.
Exactly. You don't need to overcomplicate things.
And that brings us to what Ramit actually recommends for investing, which is low-cost index funds.
Yes. Index funds are amazing. And by the way, this is a strategy endorsed by Warren Buffett himself.
Really?
Yeah, the Oracle of Omaha.
Wow. So what's so great about index funds?
So essentially, index funds allow you to match the market's performance without the stress of trying to pick individual stocks.
Okay, so it's like investing in the entire market all at once.
Exactly. Diversification is key.
I love that. Okay, and then there's this thing called dollar cost averaging, which has always sounded really complicated to me.
It sounds intimidating, but it's actually a very simple concept.
Okay.
It's just a fancy way of saying invest consistently over time, no matter what the market is doing.
Okay.
So don't try to time the market, just stay the course. Invest a little bit every month, every paycheck, whatever works for you.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, when you dollar cost average, you end up buying more shares when the prices are low and fewer shares when prices are high. So it kind of evens out over time.
I get it.
You're less likely to make emotional decisions based on short-term market swings.
That makes a lot of sense.
Ugh.
I remember when I first started investing, it was so overwhelming, I didn't even know where to begin.
It can be a lot, for sure.
But once I discovered, like, the power of automating those small, consistent contributions, it just made the whole process so much more manageable.
Totally.
And dare I say, kind of exciting.
Oh, absolutely. It's exciting to see your money grow.
Yeah.
It's like planting a seed and watching it grow into a beautiful tree.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It takes time, it takes patience, but the rewards are so worth it.
So, to wrap up, we've covered a lot of ground here with Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. We've talked about credit scores, sneaky bank fees, those high-interest online savings accounts, the power of automation.
Don't forget conscious spending.
Yeah, and being mindful about where our money is going, and, of course, investing.
Yes. It's about taking control of your financial future.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, what's resonating with you the most?
What's standing out to you from all of this? It's about figuring out what you really value and then making sure your spending reflects that.
Yes. And to help with that, Ramit has this whole thing about automating your finances.
Oh, yeah. It's like putting your money on autopilot.
Right. So tell me more about that.
So basically, he's all about using technology to your advantage.
Okay.
Like setting up automatic transfers for your savings.
Yeah.
So every time you get paid, a certain amount goes straight into your savings account before you even have a chance to spend it.
Oh, I like that.
And then you can automate your investments too.
Okay.
Like with those micro investing apps or setting up regular contributions to your retirement account.
That's a good idea. I always forget to do that.
Right, exactly. It's like you're less likely to make those impulse purchases because the money's already been squirreled away.
It's so true. I'm definitely guilty of impulse purchases.
And the best part is once you set it up, you don't have to think about it again.
It's like magic.
It really is. And it frees up so much mental space because you're not constantly stressing about your finances.
That's huge.
Right, because who needs more stress in their life?
Not me. Okay, so we're automating like crazy, which is awesome.
Yes.
But now let's talk about investing, because I feel like that's where things can get really confusing.
It definitely can be intimidating, especially if you're not sure where to start.
Exactly, and there are so many different opinions out there.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's got an opinion on what stocks to buy.
Right. It's like, who do you even listen to?
Well, Ramit actually talks about this in his book. He calls it the myth of the expert.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Like, he gives this example of these professional wine tasters who were completely fooled by white wine that was dyed red.
With food coloring.
Yeah. And it just goes to show that even the so-called experts can get it wrong.
Totally.
Mm.
So how do we know what to believe?
Well, Ramit's philosophy is all about keeping it simple and focusing on the strategies that have stood the test of time.
Okay, I like that.
He's a big advocate for low-cost index funds, which are basically like baskets of stocks that track a particular market index.
So instead of trying to pick individual stocks, you're investing in the entire market.
Exactly. It's like a one-stop shop for diversification.
That's important, right?
Absolutely. Because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Makes sense. Okay, so index funds, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this other term I've heard, dollar cost averaging.
Oh, yeah. That's another one that sounds really complicated, but it's actually super straightforward.
Okay, good, because I was about to ask you to explain it.
Basically, it just means investing a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of the market conditions.
So like every month, no matter what.
Exactly. It's about being consistent rather than trying to time the market, which can be really difficult even for the pros.
That's a relief to hear because I'm definitely not a pro.
And the cool thing about dollar cost averaging is that it takes the emotion out of investing.
Oh, I like that. Because
Mhm.
I tend to get emotional about money.
And when you're not constantly checking the markets and making impulsive decisions, you're more likely to make rational choices and stick with your long-term plan.
It's like that autopilot thing we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It's all about automating your finances and letting your money work for you.
Okay, so we've got our finances automated. We're investing in index funds, and we're dollar cost averaging like pros.
You got it.
But what about those bigger financial decisions, like buying a house or a car?
Those are big ones.
Right. Ramit has some interesting thoughts on those topics, too.
Oh, absolutely. He does not shy away from challenging conventional wisdom.
Like what?
Well, for example, he's not afraid to say that buying a house is not always the best investment.
Really? That seems kind of radical.
It does, right.
Right.
But he backs it up with a lot of data, and he makes some really compelling points. Well, for one thing, he argues that renting can actually give you more flexibility and freedom, especially if you're not sure where you want to live long term.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he also points out that owning a home comes with a lot of hidden costs that people don't always factor in,
Like what?
like property taxes and insurance and maintenance.
Oh, yeah, those can add up.
Exactly. And then there's the opportunity cost of having all that money tied up in your house that you could be investing elsewhere.
That's a really good point.
So he's not saying don't buy a house. He's just saying don't assume that it's always the best financial decision.
Okay, so it's about weighing the pros and cons carefully.
Exactly. And figuring out what makes the most sense for your individual circumstances and goals.
And what about buying a car? Any unconventional wisdom there?
Oh, absolutely. Ramit is all about negotiating the best possible price on a car.
Okay, that's not so radical.
Right. But he takes it to a whole other level.
How so?
Well, he recommends doing your research beforehand, knowing exactly what you want and how much it should cost. And then he suggests contacting multiple dealerships and pitting them against each other to get the lowest price.
I like how this guy thinks.
Right. He's all about being a savvy consumer and not letting anyone take advantage of you.
And speaking of not letting anyone take advantage of you, he also has some great advice for dealing with student loans, which can be a huge financial burden for a lot of people.
Oh, for sure. Student loan debt is a major problem these days.
It feels impossible to escape sometimes.
It can be really overwhelming, but Ramit breaks down the different repayment options, and he even provides scripts for negotiating with loan servicers.
That's so helpful.
He really empowers you to take control of your debt and find a solution that works for you.
So we've talked about big purchases like houses and cars
Mhm.
and even student loan debt. But what about those everyday financial decisions that can also add up over time?
Like what? Oh, those little things like eating out too much or, those impulse purchases that we all make.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm
Yeah.
definitely guilty of that.
Right. But Ramit gives you strategies for curbing those spending habits. Like he talks about the importance of having a budget,
Yes, budgets are key.
but not just any budget. He calls it a conscious spending plan.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah. It's about being intentional with your money, deciding what's important to you, and then allocating your funds accordingly.
So it's not about depriving yourself, it's about prioritizing.
Exactly. Spend extravagantly on the things you love, cut back ruthlessly on the things you don't. And he even gives tips for negotiating everyday expenses like your cell phone bill or your internet bill.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Those little savings here and there really add up.
Absolutely. It's about being a conscious consumer in all aspects of your life. And one
Yeah.
thing that really stood out to me was his advice on giving back.
Oh, yeah. I love that part.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the me of personal finance.
Totally.
But Ramit emphasizes that true wealth is about more than just money. It's about using your resources to make a positive impact on the world.
I love that. It's about aligning your values with your spending and your giving.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be huge, massive donations. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Even just volunteering your time or donating to a local charity can make a difference.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground here today, haven't we?
We really have. From automating our finances to negotiating better deals to giving back to our communities.
It's been quite the deep dive.
It has. And I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what Ramit Sethi covers in I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to explore.
But if there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from today, it's that financial freedom is within reach.
It really is, no matter where you're starting from.
It's about taking those small, consistent steps, building those good financial habits, and not being afraid to ask for what you want.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are resources out there, there are communities, there are even financial advisors who can help guide you.
Yes. So until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep into those personal finance journeys.